Unfortunately, drugs like methamphetamine are highly addictive. People can get, they take it once and they get addicted to it. And maybe the first time they were just inquisitive. We can see the statistics at St. Giles Hospital with not enough space, and being the only psychiatric hospital, it's trying to grapple with the situation with dealing with people with real mental health issues, and now compounded by drug-induced issues. We know already the medical superintendent had earlier said he needs about 200 nurses, he has about 90. The facilities are not the best. For decades it hasn't been maintained. If you go to the women's ward for a visit, you would have gone to that facility. It needs a lot of care and renovation. But then there's others who need help. We know you are not in the business of medicine, but I'm talking about rehabilitation, and there needs to be expert consultation when it comes to that. What's your message to those who are deciding on this, including, we have been talking about a rehab facility, we haven't had one.
Yeah, just going back to your question to Ms. Vuki, you know, one of the presenters during those 2 days seminar was Jose Santos, an expert in transnational crimes. And he made a statement that really touched the core of my heart about these drug cartels, Mexican drug cartels, two main sources, from Latin America and from Southeast Asia. And he said for these drug cartels, Fiji is not important to them, but they need Fiji, because Fiji doesn't have the money that they're looking for. But they need Fiji as a hub, as a transit point. So the message I receive from that is this: we are being used as a people, as a country, being exploited by these greedy people who have no concern whatsoever for human life, for families disintegration, for the addiction that our people are going through. Because Fiji is not important to them, because Fiji cannot supply the money they want. Australia and New Zealand can, but Fiji is needed. And you know, I thought I should just raise that so that it evokes a sense of urgency as well. Going back to rehabilitation, it's correct, Vijay. I think our political leaders in the past did not envisage that one day Fiji would reach this crisis, this level. So they probably, I don't know whether there were talks of drug rehabilitation centers, but we are not experts on that. And we did have, in one of the panels, I think the superintendent of St. Giles also presented on this. Now, I can talk from my own experience. We did a drug awareness campaign in Nosori 2 years ago, and for one whole week. And we targeted the primary school students for the mornings and the high school students for the afternoon sessions. And as a result of that, we were able to get 11 young people from the streets to our church facility. 3 girls and 8 men, all of them addicted, either to meth or marijuana. So it was my first experience to try and rehabilitate. I'm not an expert in this. It was my first experience to actually see one of them going through withdrawal, when his body wants drugs, the drugs that he's addicted to, and it is not available. And he's shaking. And he's having fever, he's getting cold and hot, and then headache, and you can see the eyes just turning red. And what do I do? Now, I heard, I might be wrong, that in professional drug rehabilitation, when they are in withdrawal, they are given the same drug, but in controlled measure. You can't do that in Fiji, because if I'm in possession of that same drug, it's a crime. Okay. Right. So the best thing I could do was pray, give him 2 Panadol. And that did the trick, if you will. But what I'm saying is this. One of the things that I think we made a commitment to is, if we could, the church could be a safe haven, if you will, a place of refuge, you know, for people who are out there addicted. I interviewed each one of them. 11 of them. I spent about 15 to 20 minutes with one of my associate pastors, sitting there, interviewing each one of them to try and find out what they're going through. About 50% of them were also HIV positive. And all because of using syringes. One of them said a very sad story. He was actually chased from the village because of the village bylaws. If you are dealing with drugs in the village, you are not going to be in the village. And now, I understand the premise of that policy because they want to protect the village. But the question is, if you chase this guy out, where does he go? He couldn't go to another village because of his reputation, so he ended up in the street. So he was in the street for 4 months when we did that drug awareness campaign. It was like an intervention into it. We brought him over to church. I can tell you, first-hand experience of Vijay, it requires a lot of patience, a lot of understanding to deal with him. We cannot apply the same rule we apply to us in our church facility. I actually told our people, because you have to understand addiction. You have to understand it. So the fact that we do not have a rehabilitation center is probably compounding the problem, and we need it. We really do. But in the meantime, I think the family, as Mrs. Vuki said, if they cannot be accepted back into the family they belong to, if the village or the Vanua cannot accept them, and if the church does not accept them, who will? So that's a challenge for us, and I think that was a commitment we made, that we will try and do our best with the minimum experience we have. There are experts who are very good at rehabilitation, but at least we still can do something, because some of these people who are addicted to drugs are victims in themselves. So if we can see it from that light, you know, the Archbishop brought up the story of the Good Samaritan in our meditation. And I thought about the priest, they all saw the same problem. The priest came and the Levite came. That's us, that's me, that's the Archbishop, that's a pastor. The pastor came, saw the man dying, he went away. The Levite came, saw the man dying, he went away. But the Samaritan came. They all saw the problem. But the only difference was, two people saw with their eyes, the Samaritan saw with his heart. So how do we see this problem in Fiji? If we just see with our eyes, we'll probably do nothing about it. But if we see with a heart of compassion and love, non-judgmental at all, knowing that these people need love as much as we do, I think we can do something about it. Family, church, the Vanua, everyone can do something about this.
Mrs. Vuki, talk about the real need to have a rehabilitation center, as it has really compounded the problem.
Yes, I believe this is something that we need to take forward to the government to provide a rehabilitation center, and especially for our children. Our youths have been addicted to drugs, to have a safe space if they've been withdrawn from their family, if they've been withdrawn from the Vanua or the village, they've been pushed away, and they have a special space. And this is something I would like to share, that I shared with one of the ministers, that we need to have a rehab center for Fiji, that to keep our children away from the city, away from the telephones, a place that, and people are there to, people who have compassion, to be there to look after them. And this is something that's really, really important, like Reverend Manasa has shared with us. It's about the heart that we need to deal with this. It's not about see that person and ignore and leave it behind. It is about the compassion of people, the community, compassion of a mother, to be there, to be present at this point.
Archbishop Chong, it's been more than 5 years of calls for Fiji to have a rehabilitation center, a proper, well-facilitated place where people can go, maybe in a remote area out of the city area, to ensure people get properly rehabilitated. As Reverend Kolivuso also says, it is a tough ask to just keep them at a church facility because of the different mechanisms and the medical procedures and other things that you have to implement as procedures. From your perspective, do you think that we are now losing a lot of valuable time by not having that facility?
Yeah, so rehab is important, but again, you have to take the holistic thing. You have to have the prevention. You have to address the law enforcement, and then also address the rehab. How do we reintegrate people back into family and society when they have gone astray? It works. So our government has to invest on rehab centers. Why I'm saying it works? Because I'm just thinking of a village down on your way to Navua, I think before Nambukaves. I'm told that is run by a Church of the Poor church, and they cared for, I'm not too sure, but at one time it was just a village made of coconut leaves, but now they've got proper houses. They're still doing the same thing, planting and selling. And I heard that it'd be nice to get a story of that village and how it was started, because it's a good testimony for how the Church of the Poor converted people who were like, I'm not too sure about, but they've created a good village. You have Ben Morrison. We had somebody from Lautoka, pastor again.
Yeah.
He's doing rehab.
Teenage challenge.
Yeah. And then you have places like Shivalia Training Center in Wenandoi that has unprivileged boys attending that school, and I'm sure many other churches have some degree of thing. So it is there at a certain extent. It's helping people make the change, and so we really appeal to the government, to invest on these measures, from prevention to addressing the law enforcement, and then to the rehab. And then while Reverend Manasa was speaking, the thing that came into my mind is that we've got to see not just the substance abuse and the drugs, we have to see human beings and the dignity of human beings that is at stake there. And how do we, restore this human dignity, whatever it takes, because at the heart of it, it's the people with drug addiction, in fact, are people who are crying out. There's unmet needs, whether it's money, whether it's love and affection, purpose in life. This is what they need. It's interesting, we had a youth seminar about 2 weeks ago, and we asked them on the evening, what are your expectations from this seminar? And about 30 kids from 16, 17, 18, 19, that young teenage group. So we were thinking they would want to talk about drugs because it's in the newspaper every day, but no. They said, we want to know more about God. We want to know more about our faith. So this is what is the people that are on the extreme side of this, the loss of faith, loss of purpose in life, and the absence of God is the thing that they are really hungering for. And for some, unfortunately, think that they can get this from drugs. So in front of us, yes, it's a drug, substance abuse and drug addiction, but behind this is a human person that has basic human needs that is crying out. And then how do we fill that human need? Yeah. So our rehab as church, that's where churches come in.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break. In a world where opinions are loud and facts can fade, there's one voice in Fiji that stays true to the truth. For 40 years, our news team has brought factual and reliable information on our 5 radio stations: FM 96, Legend FM, Naftarang, Viti FM, Radio Sargam, and for over 2 decades, Fiji Village has been where credibility lives, connecting Fijians to the stories that matter most. With over 3 million monthly page views and a growing digital reach across Fiji and beyond, Fiji Village delivers news as it happens, when it happens. The news, sports, in-depth talk shows, explainers, special events, entertainment, business sections, video features from our 5 radio stations and live radio all come together on this live and engaging platform. Through our flagship show Straight Talk, we bring the nation's most important voices, the people of the country and the leaders to the forefront, creating space for dialogue, accountability and change. From breaking stories to community campaigns, Fiji Village has become part of the fabric of everyday Fiji life. For businesses and brands, partnering with Fiji Village means more than just visibility. It's credibility. Fiji Village, Fiji's most trusted digital news source. Real people, real stories. Fiji Village, your trusted news provider. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan and we're discussing our first of a number of a series of programs that we'll have on Fiji Village Straight Talk, where we'll be talking about the current drug situation in the country. Tonight we've had the pleasure of speaking to Archbishop Peter Lloyd Chong, also the Fiji Council of Churches President, Reverend Manasa Kolivuso, who's the leading minister of CMF International Central Region and also a senior pastor of Faith Harvest Church, and Mrs. Esita Vuki, who's a lay minister at the Holy Trinity Anglican Cathedral. Now, we've done the diagnosis, we've talked about all the different things. What must be done now? If we're talking about, we touched a bit on enforcement, Mrs. Vuki, and about communities even saying, we know this house where the drugs is being sold. We have contacted police and sometimes they have given up. There's other things like people have situations where they have come across things but they do not know what to do next. Some may be watching tonight. Sometimes when they watch the show, they're reaching out, who can I reach out to, because I have a situation in my own family, maybe an addict at home, a family member who's, and they do not know how to deal with the situation. From your perspective, based on the situation at hand, what needs to be done in terms of working with some of the authorities, which includes police, the government, etc.?
Well, thank you, Ms. Vijay. Like working with the government, I think the way forward that I believe and the family that we need. I always remind us with the family in our conversation to continue to address this. One of the things that we need to come together as a nations and also as a church to have a national prayer, to pray together as a church, to pray for our country. And that is something I believe that is a priority, that we need to pray together as a nations to pray for the issues that happen right now. Because prayer is very powerful. Prayer together with the nations and enable us to have with our family to pray together and have a quality time with our family in prayers, shared with them the message, continue to share with them the message that needs to be shared. And that is something that I believe that what we have learned in the last 2 days workshop, we emphasize that we need to come together as a nation, as a church, put away our differences, put away the name of our church, come together as a body of Christ to embody our nations through prayers.
Archbishop Chong is the president of the Fiji Council of Churches. What are you prepared to commit publicly tonight in terms of considering maybe even establishing structured rehabilitation programs with the government and other NGOs, etc.?
Yeah, like I said before, in the response to drugs and people with drug addiction, there's, we can put them into 3 big categories. One is the prevention. That's where family, youth, and because a lot of youth are in school ministry. And then you talk about how the law enforcement, they need to be strong on their suppression of people who are dealing with drugs, selling it. And then the other one is the rehab. Again, our strength is in this prevention because we're dealing with families, we're dealing with young people, we're dealing with spirituality, and this is schools, and spirituality, the crisis in spirituality, and this is the purpose of religion. Why do we need religion? Is to give meaning to life. And so this is the church's strength. I see myself, and we want to already, we've talked about this with the church leaders, and within the Catholic Church, we want to focus on that. Before Easter, we have a season called the Lent season. The main theme there is conversion, to repent, to change. So tomorrow we're having a meeting with our youth group to plan for 3 youth seminars focusing on drugs and people with drug addiction to be done in the 3 regions. There's here in Suva for the Central East, the West and the North, to bring in youth leaders and some adults who will attend the work similar to what we did with the church leaders, train them to be able to go to their churches, church community, villages, and do the same thing there. And so talking about the problem, seeing, not to be silent and ignore the thing, but to be able to look at that. So that's what what we plan to do. There are many other things that, of course, that needs to be done. We own quite a number of schools, so we need to see education now not only as academic education, but how we can add values, principles into the education so that we're not just touching the mind of the students, but also their heart, their values and their lives. And so that's another thing that we will definitely be looking at. And youth ministry is going to be a very important thing because they are the most vulnerable in this situation.
Reverend Kolivuso, there's a lot of greed in the drug trade. You highlighted that they don't care about Fiji, but there's a lot of Fijians who are now getting involved, and it's dangerous as well, because when you deal with drugs, now we have had police reaching out to the military to get assistance as a support if needed. And from your perspective, while we establish these different ways of dealing with this, one of the things is to reduce that supply. And what do you think needs to be done to ensure that is well targeted?
Somebody said, Vijay, there are three characteristics of greed. It provides for self, it protects self, it promotes self. So when a person has greed or lust, it's all about me, myself, and I, which means I have no consideration of others. So I don't care what happens to others as long as what I want is met. And that's exactly what we are facing here with these big drug cartels that are supplying these drugs into our country. As a country being used as a hub and being a maritime nation, 300 islands, 110 inhabited, we do not have the capacity nor the infrastructure to police our waters. That is just a sad reality. We can ask for assistance from foreign countries. I'm promoting something. This is my own personal view. Why don't we ask the US government to establish a military base here to deal with this? And then we solicit the support of the Australian Navy, the New Zealand Navy, and our local Navy. Like what Trump is doing in America, you see, because Trump is now being aggressive in fighting it, they have to find alternative ways. That's why we can't stop the supply coming in. So this is my own personal, because the situation we're facing right now needs some tough decisions. A good case study of a modern day way of dealing with such problem is the country of El Salvador. President Bukele, 35 years old when he came to power, what was the problem there? Gangs, 70 to 80,000 gangs. When he came to power as president, his whole premise was, why should 80,000 people hold hostage a country of 6.5 million? What was the first thing he did? He prayed and fasted. And then what did he do? God gave him the wisdom, legal review, change the laws, arm the police and the military, go after all the gangs, build the biggest prison in the world, sea court, and just bring these 70, 80,000 people. It was the murder capital of the world. Now it is the safest place in the Western Hemisphere. Now that is a modern day case. I said that, you know, people can say from a human rights perspective that's too harsh, okay? But the situation we are facing right now demands a national response that suits the crime. So in terms of supply, I don't think we have the capacity to deal with that, to be honest. The police can go only this far. They are even using narco submarines right now. These people are desperate. They will do anything. And it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So maybe at a national level, do we have the political will? So, you know, I'm questioning that.
We need to move quickly.
Quickly? We need to move not only quickly, but wide. And I just feel like maybe we are not moving quickly enough. And I think this is where we come in as well as the church, to try and do our bit and our part.
Pray over the people who need to move quickly. Now, the other issue is about, people have said, these drugs are mainly destined for Australia.
Yeah.
That Australia needs to play a bigger part. It's got a bigger budget, it's got a bigger capacity in terms of navy and surveillance. Just adding on to that, if you want to make a call to Australia, they'll be watching tonight.
Why not? Because I heard that the price of drugs in Australia is most expensive compared to Europe. And I think Jose Santos said something that cost $50,000 in the US is now costing $350,000 somewhere else. That's just an example. So they will do everything in their power to use our country as a hub, transit point, but to use our country as a hub, transit, they'll exploit our people. That's a sad reality, Vijay. This is what really touched the core of my heart. Why should we as a nation be used and exploited by people who don't care about us?
Archbishop Chong, do you think Australia needs to do more?
Oh yeah, you're talking there with Manasa. There is currently a partnership that is being.
Vuvale.
Yeah, that one. There's one in DFET and the Pacific Church leaders. So I was involved. I attended one meeting about 2 years ago, and since then there's been thing. So I just got an email from one of the people from that partnership to come and do the evaluation of that partnership. So I'm not directly involved in that partnership because I kind of got lost. Did not attend the meetings. But I'd say, okay, we have a big problem down here in the Pacific. We are being used as a transition point to get drugs from South America to you people, Can you help us, Can we partner in protecting us and protecting Australia and New Zealand? So that's definitely a call to Australia is a big country. They have more resources than us. Definitely, with more resources, they have more responsibility to protect our part of the world.
Next question in relation to mobilizing groups, women's groups. We've talked about men also need to be mobilized, maybe more sessions with them. From your perspective, Mrs. Vuki, how quickly can this be done? How can the churches be involved in doing this, in leading the charge in relation to this?
Well, thank you, Mr. Vijay. In relation to this, in my own perspective, I involved in the Ecumenical Women World Day of Prayer, in Fiji, chapter in Fiji. Also, we are part of the global Ecumenical Women Movement, which is focused on prayer, to pray about the social issue that arise in other parts of the world. And this year, we are praying for Nigeria. Not only Nigeria, we pray for our country, Fiji, the things that happen in our country, the crisis that arise in our country. And this is something that we as women, we carry along with us, that we may be silenced, but we continue to pray for our nations. From the last 2 years, we pray and we move to different churches as far as where Reverend Manasa is. We continue to pray for our nations, for the elections, the coming of the new elections. And we see that is something it's really needed in our country. We continue to do that, to pray for our country and also for other parts of the world, because we find that, which is very important, to communicate and to link with one another in the national level about the social issue that happen.
How important do you think is for the men's training that has been highlighted, that men are the main perpetrators in gender-based violence? Men are the main perpetrators in the family situations we've got.
Well, I think as we have heard from Reverend Manasa and the Archbishop, we need to have a proper statistic for men, like a program for men to bring them together and have a program to help them in a situation that they need to know their role as a father to the family, as a father to their children, not just leaving them like that. And that's where when we have a prayer, we also invite men, not only women. We invite men and youth and children to be part of this, to know the importance of together as unity, as a family, to come together, to pray together, and to fight for the battle that they are facing in their daily life.
Our Archbishop Chong, the consistency is important. Education, our education system, how much of drug education can go in there, the awareness, etc. Apart from the church, the Fiji Council of Churches linking up with the education system and with other ministries. Do you believe that this needs to be elevated now? Because it's a multifaceted approach.
Yeah. Like I said, at the center of this thing is a human person, and the most vulnerable are young people. So we can't just focus on the substance itself, on the law, and the suppliers. At the heart of this is there are people that turn to drugs. So. And there's a book called The Hidden Addiction, Pastoral Response to Legal Drugs, those ones that are legal. But the same argument that they're making there, in any drug response must address the human person, who is like, as we've said, is a person that is finite, that means not complete. There's always the good he dreams of, but at the same time dealing with a hard reality that is not an infinite being like God. So we've got to, our education system has to address this whole person, the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological needs of this person, and not just purely academic. Our teachers have to be trained to be like this, because they're the one teaching the children in their training for the teaching profession. They have to be themselves undergo some kind of a training that deals with their own person, so that whatever wounds they might be carrying is put aside, so they can minister or teach the person in its totality. So definitely there's a lot of things that we need to restore, review, put in new things, because as somebody yesterday said, we can't be just using yesterday's solutions to today's problem. We are faced with a new problem. Some years ago, drugs wasn't there. There was cigarette, there was sniffing petrol and homebrew. But now we're faced with a new problem. So some very important measures that the whole of society need to tighten up to address this current problem that we are facing.
Reverend Kolivuso, I talked about escalated response, even from the young generation, how the Ministry of Education and others need to move quickly so that the younger generation understand in this multifaceted approach. Has work already started? The church is working with the ministry. Have you approached them, or have they approached you? Where are we at with this?
One of the things that came up in our discussion was most of the churches own schools. The Catholic Church has a lot of schools. The Methodist Church, we have a kindergarten, primary school, and a high school. We were talking about introducing values education right at kindergarten level. Take the example of Japan. The Japanese emphasize more on values at that level than anything else. Not so much the subject matter, just the values. You see? Because if we can teach these values, you can mold the mind and the heart of a young person. The values of respect, the values of honor, the values of honoring your own body, and especially with the drug situation that we are facing now. So this is probably something that we can include with the talks with the Ministry of Education, given the crisis we are facing. The Archbishop talked about the teachers being trained as well on how to teach the students. It's one thing just to teach knowledge. It's another thing to actually touch the heart of a child. But the teacher must be trained accordingly, which means a change in the curriculum in the teaching fraternity, in the teaching institution. And perhaps the curriculum itself needs to be tailor-made to face the crisis. Why don't we have some basic curriculum on drugs that can be used now in the school system? So this is something probably the Ministry of Education can use. And not only that, bringing those values to our own. Every church has a Sunday school, a children's ministry, a women's ministry, youth ministry. Reintroduce these values from a biblical perspective. So values education, I think, is important. And I feel like in the modern era we're living in, the most powerful influences that are coming out of society right now, who are the movers and the shakers of society, are mostly the women and the youths. The women and the youths. Unfortunately, not so much the men, Vijay, but we need to awaken the men because we need to take leadership. We are the head of the family. So that if we can add capacity to that, to our youths and our women, and having the men take their rightful place and strengthen the family structure, inculcate values education into the system. Of course, we need to work with the Ministry of Education to be able to formalize that, especially in our church schools, so that we can shape the minds of the people much earlier in life.
And that needs to move quickly.
Very quickly too, yes.
Now, there's been calls to have the death penalty. Although the Constitution doesn't allow it at the moment, the people are calling for stricter sentencing and penalties. Mrs. Vuki, what are your thoughts on that? There are plans to have a death penalty for those who are found being in possession of drugs, depending on the amount of drugs. Right now, there's a life sentence already in place in our laws. What are your thoughts on, and what's your message on the people calling for the death penalty?
Well, Vijay, from my perspective of view, I see that the law needs to be changed, because you said that the life sentence and also those who've been affected in drugs, a life sentence. And I think they need to have a space for us parents, for us families to come in to visit our family members or whoever is admitted who've been affected in drug addiction. It's very important that, like we have heard in our conversation, it's very important to mold and to accept these accept these children or young children who are being affected, addicted to drugs. You know, to me, I would like to share here my experience in dealing with a man who's been addicted to drugs. To be there with him, he needs love. He needs someone to listen to him, because it's not only a drug addiction, it's beyond that. It's beyond that. Like we have heard also that we discussed, it's maybe the situation that he's been going through in underground in the family, things that are impact in his life that move them or move that person to that situation to take drugs. And that is something that for me, I'd like to share here, the experience of being a mother, to be there at the present time that they have been pushed away, they've been ignored by the family, and which is very important for us to provide something that they know that they are precious, they are special, and they are created by God. And our task as Christians to bring life, to bring that life again. And that is something that I'd like to share.
Archbishop Chong calls for death penalty, some suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, when you begin with your your means to achieve what you want, must be in line with, it doesn't just mean that you want to do this and that justifies your means, even if the means is wrong, you know. So there's no, if to achieve an end does not necessarily justify what you're gonna do, even when that what you're gonna do is evil. So killing is evil. It doesn't mean that just because you want to achieve that, the good that you want to do will justify the means you, and in this case, the means is killing somebody. So that is a straightforward no as far as Christianity is concerned. With the 10 Commandments, you can't take somebody else's life. There are ways, as we've been talking about, how to deal with the drug problem. Here we're talking about the people, the suppliers. First, the law enforcers. We talked about border control. These are things that we can do. Now, police are not doing their job. We hear stories like the one I've talked about. Drug peddling is just down 100 meters away from the police post. There's somebody told me there's a place in Naunawa or Nandawa. It's a known place for selling drugs. This person's house is surrounded by roofing iron. Nobody knows what's happening inside. Common knowledge, but police cannot nab him. Why? Maybe the law doesn't help them. So we've got to find the other means. And if the penalty is life sentence, I mean, that's good enough. But with the life sentence, there's a chance of reintegrating this person back into society. You take away his life, you can't bring back that life. So death penalty is not an answer to this.
It's interesting.
I agree with him.
It's interesting that police there's enough laws for the police to act to. There's issues being raised about whether some officers are complicit because there's a lot of money involved. So definitely the lure of money makes the people make decisions as well.
Vijay, when you talk
in
about...
relation to death penalty.
Yeah, when you talk about justice, there are two streams to it. Retributive justice. People have to face the consequences of their crime. In this case, life imprisonment. And you have to also consider restorative justice. There needs to be a balance between the two. So when these two go together, you have retributive justice. People must know when they commit a crime, they have to pay for it, they go to jail. But at the same time, we are dealing with a human person. I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. Which means that that person, even if he has committed the most evil crime on earth, still has the capacity to change. The only room in the world you cannot fill to capacity is the room for improvement. That life can improve, can become better. So when you balance retributive justice and restorative justice, what you mean by that is that that person who is in jail, even for life imprisonment, the life still can change. He still can be reintegrated into society. Love must be exercised, and we must deal with it with compassion. We believe in justice, but the balance between the two is important. So the question, I guess, from a Christian perspective, as far as death penalty, I think that is out of our book at the moment, because we have to deal with this.
But they should serve their time for doing what is wrong.
Yes.
But not take their life. So I just want to clarify again. You took me by surprise with that question, but this important thing, the end, what you want to achieve does not justify the means you're going to do. Just because you want to achieve that, you can do whatever you want to do here, whether it's sending somebody to prison or taking his life. The end does not make something that is wrong right.
And as we finish off the show tonight, if you are to policymakers watching this show tonight, we have talked about urgency, things that are urgent, escalation, consistency in what has to be done if we are to achieve great solutions from this. I'll start off with you, Mrs. Vuki. What's your message to policymakers watching tonight? What would you want them to do and do quickly?
Thank you, Mr. Vijay. I think that I would like to quote in the scripture. It says, "Come to me, all who are weary and are labor, and I will give you rest." To me, the message that needs to these are the message from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11, 28. It's a promises of Jesus, a promises to relieve, a promises to comfort, a promises to rest soul to those who are overburdened by demands of life. And also the message needs to address to our people, to the society, that we need to encourage our families, to encourage our loved ones who are out there. And especially during this crisis, to encourage them to see the importance of a life. Life is very important. Life is a free gift from God. It is not something that someone built that life. It's something that is precious, and it's a gift from God.
Reverend Kolivuso, the final question about if you were to tell the policymakers what needs to be done quickly with a matter of urgency and ensuring consistency, what would that be?
It takes political will. If the president of a country like El Salvador can turn his country from the murder capital of the world to the safest place, be the safest place in the Western Hemisphere, we can do it here. It takes political will to make some tough political decisions, because the time we are living in calls for some tough measures as well. It means we have to get out of our comfort zone. We cannot do things as usual and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity. If we want to see a change in the outcome, then we must make the necessary changes in the means that we are trying to accomplish that. So I feel like we need to move fast in legal review. That's what policy decisions can make, and only Parliament can change the laws. So every member of Parliament must take this on board. This year is general election. So I think this should be something, if we take this problem seriously, it's a serious problem, then I think those people who are leading us, political leaders of our country, needs to have the political will to really take the bull by the horn and do something fast, because the country needs it, and I think the country demands it from them at this point in time.
Archbishop Chong?
Yeah. Beyond, so I'd like to endorse what said and Reverend Manasa, but we have to move beyond the law and the policy makers, because law, policy, again, are like languages that deal with legal thing. What we need is more than that. We need a language that can touch the hearts, the imagination of our people, to move their hearts, to create a new imagining, a new thinking, and inspire people. So you can put things on a bill. That's a limitation of this approach. Bill. What's the language of this bill gonna be? Whereas and that kind of thing gonna come in, the legal thing. We are trying to communicate to people, so it must be a language that will touch, move, inspire people to be able to think anew. So we need people talk about the power of symbols, the symbolic language. And that's why songs, poetry, dances, meke play an important part in people's life, because they have the power to communicate. That's why, singing, dancing is also important to the church, because they communicate what words cannot communicate. So policy, yes, but not policy alone. This thing is not a parliamentarian thing that is going to work through a bill. You're going to pass this bill, and then I don't know what else. But you need a language that people can communicate. People can turn into music, dance, poetry, art. These are creative communications. The symbolic language is what we should, but we should move there too, apart from the law and the policies.
Archbishop Chong, Mrs. Vuki and Reverend Kolivuso, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be on the show as we start off this year with a series of shows on this very important issue, the crisis that affects our country, and how a cross-section of the community is dealing with it or has to take action in relation to that. You are the first group of people who have talked about it, and I'm sure the viewers and listeners have enjoyed the conversation tonight, and definitely demanding for action, demanding for urgency and consistency. Until the next fortnight, have a great evening.